Well, welcome everyone to the Buddhist Society Zoom meeting on Chaplancy. This is the second one of our talks, and we're moving gradually towards a proper training program or some sort of training program, which we'll start in 2021 and really sort of get it going. We've made several attempts in the past to get a chaplaincy program going, and it's sort of half worked and not worked. But this time we're really going to focus. So anybody who's interested in actually joining the chaplaincy program or is interested and wants to contribute in one way or another, please can you send in your names to the Buddhist Society, and in the subject bar put in chaplaincy, and then we can start with a chaplaincy group. We can start then moving forward. And Mariano is going to be our supremo of chaplaincy. He's shaking his head. For the time, he's our representative. He's been working very hard, going to hospitals everywhere, conducting funerals and doing all sorts of very good work for us, particularly during this COVID crisis. So Mariano, I want you to, I don't want to take up any more of your time on this talk. So introducing you, Mariano, and thank you very much for your work, and
thank you
for your talk.
Thank you. So we might want to start with a minute of collecting the heart, so that we make sure that we are here, and making a dedication, setting our intentions for the evening. So if we sit ourselves up properly and just breathe in and relax the body, and perhaps become aware of the background, the sounds, the temperature in the room. And we breathe out and relax, and we feel the air warmer as it gets out of the nostrils. And we breathe in and feel the body might be achy, tired, or full of energy maybe. And we just relax into it. And we let go. And as we breathe out, we can imagine that we let out all our worries, our concerns, our regrets, our fears, unease, and hand them over to life itself. It can take care of them. And we are going to start the evening with a multi-faith prayer invocation. Whenever I am asked in hospitals normally to say a prayer, something inspiring, unless the patients are specific or unless I know that they really want something related to their faith and so on, I'll just go into some generic type of prayer. And so it goes like this. May great compassion arise in our heart and bring us relief from suffering, clarity to see deeply into the nature of our existence, our impermanence, and our interconnectedness, courage to accept our frailty and vulnerability, strength to bear what cannot be avoided with equanimity, the warmth of the heart that extends to all living beings and reconnects us all, joyful partaking in the wonderful mystery of life, gratefulness for all the kindness, love, and protection afforded to us by our family and friends, readiness and openness for what is coming next, with a deep trust in life itself, our common heart and ground of being. May all beings find contentment and be free from suffering. May them all realize their true nature. And it is normally well received by everyone. The stress is on reconnecting to our experience, on acceptance and reconnecting to others, which is what people need most when they are lonely at the end of their life, maybe, and trying to find some meaning and some comfort. So if Lavinia, if we want to move on to the next slide. Just a reminder for us of what type of care we are talking about. There is the pastoral care, which is the basic care concerned with emotional support, help with personal needs, problems, traumas. And it requires, on our side, a non-judgmental presence, open, total listening, wholehearted listening. And we are not trying to fix things for the patients. It is more in the way of facilitating the self-healing process. And when they really ask for advice, we try and do it from a non-involved standpoint. You can imagine that they come from all sorts of backgrounds. They've got their own ideas. And even though we disagree with them, we are just there to help them. It becomes easily spiritual. So we move up a gear, and we always need to be ready to move up and down according to circumstances. And then it is a search for meaning, significance, wholeness, integration, self-worth, need for expression and creativity, the sense of the sacred, forgiveness, hope, trust, strength, transcendence, felt sense of connectivity with our ground of being, our experience and others. And that borders with the religious one. Sometimes, I'm sure Keith has been in the same kind of situation. I've seen that Keith is present. Sometimes we move into a religious territory on the terms of the patient as well. And I might be saying the prayer of St. Francis for them, if they ask to, without feeling disconnect from what I am doing. It is important that we can connect to whatever we are doing, and we don't experience it in a confrontational manner. Otherwise, we'd better not. But obviously, if we find Buddhists, all the better, meaning we can go into all sorts of Buddhist rituals, ceremonies, across traditions. We are there for all sorts of traditions, and we need to be ready to deliver in the way expected by the patients. So if you want to move down to the next one, Davidia. And I know that some people, you often hear them moaning and complaining that Buddhism is not a religion and so on, but in chaplaincy, actually, very much it is. If we adopt the standards set out by Ninian Smart a few decades ago now, he identified the 7 dimensions. Nowadays, people have got fewer or more of those. But basically, it needs to satisfy at least most of them, let's say at least 6 of them, to be regarded as a religion. And we have got a practical and ritual side. And some traditions are stronger on ceremonies and rituals than others. And then we have got an experiential and an emotional side. There is a strong emphasis on personal practice in Buddhism. Some traditions more than others, but generally speaking, it is not enough to be saved by something else, an outer power, even though we've got the outer power tradition, the Pure Land. But there is a strong emphasis on walking the path ourselves. It is a soteriological path of salvation, and it needs to be walked. And it leads to the release of suffering and the transformation and the gentling of the raw energy, which then has got a chance of becoming the joyous participation in the wonderful mystery. And there is a narrative and mythic side. The story of the Buddha is the first one that comes to mind, but also the bodhisattvas, the ancestors. There is a rich and colorful cosmology, and especially in the Mahayana makes a good use of it. So if you can move down to the next slide. And there is a doctrinal and philosophical one. And people are keen to say sometimes Buddhism is a philosophy. it can be very sophisticated. Yeah, if we sit down with the old Indian treatises, goodness me, and it can be. I was listening to a modern rendering of the way things come into being. The 12-linked chain of dependent origination married to modern cognitive science and neuroscience, and my goodness me, the effect that it had on me. And Buddhism is very sophisticated on those and adaptable as well. That is the strength. It can adapt to the narrative and language and view of the world of the time and place without losing its own core message. But that is a skillful means. It is not really the core of Buddhism. They are all there eventually to undo themselves. That is the power of a very strong symbol. In the end, it will undo itself because we need to face what cannot be put into words. And there is an ethical and legal side from Shila, the practice, the precepts, the vows, but also think of Ashoka, the edicts. And nowadays, some countries have got, Buddhism is the state religion in there. Even in Italy, there is a special treaty between the state, actually two. There is one for Soka Gakkai and one for the rest of the Buddhist community. So there is a legal side to it. It is social and institutional, especially with the communities like the Sri Lankan one or the Burmese one or the Thai. But also in the West, we are organized around monasteries, temples, and even when it is online, there are online sanghas nowadays. Never mind where the teacher is or the members are, there are online sanghas. Being together and practicing together is so important. And material, you just need to look at my back. Wonderful Buddha image there. You see a mala on the Christmas tree there. And I am wearing a stole, a pilgrim's stole there. Buddhism has got nothing to envy from other religions. So there is a strong family resemblance with other religions concerning these dimensions, but also between Buddhist traditions themselves. Some of them are stronger on some points and weaker on others, but altogether, you can actually tell they are Buddhist. They do strongly resemble each other. If you can move down another one. So very briefly, we have already covered this one. When we engage in multi-faith teams, whoever is the endorsing authority, we have to make sure that we are in good standing with the faith community. We've got a sustaining practice, self-sustaining, and a steady practice. There is a resilience there. And that we subscribe to the principles of healthcare chaplaincy, which you can see on the screen. Obviously, in multi-faith team, we do not proselytize. We are there as a service. We are there to be available to others. And we are there with an open heart and open mind. We are going to meet all sorts of people from across a big spectrum. And we need to be up to it. Okay, if you want to move to the next one, please. From our own point of view, there is a difference with other faiths, perhaps. They are the emphasis in other faiths is more on the ministerial side. There are some rituals and activities that can only be carried out by ordained ministers, and the ministers may be seen as intermediaries between the personal God and the rest of the faith community. It is not so in Buddhism. Even monks are just others walking the way alongside us. They are a bit more restrained by the disciplines, but otherwise there is no qualitative or qualitative difference between a lay practitioner and an ordained one. And so what does it mean for us? It means we are all walking on the same path, and we make ourselves available. We follow in others people's footsteps, and we make ourselves available to the ones who are around us and behind us. That is the whole idea. If you want to move down another slide. Yeah, and the Kalyana Mitta model was set out in the early scriptures as well. When the Buddha was asked what the qualities of a good friend would be. And it is obvious that it is about openness, about service, about being available, about sticking to people and situations without running away from them, and providing a space to people in need where they can actually express their emotions in a safe way and feel safe at the same time, without overwhelming them with our own reactions and emotions. That is the core of it, because unless we can actually hold in our own reactions, we are not going to help them. Please, the next one. So what are we doing at the moment? Obviously, all of us are aware that there are a lot of restrictions, not just in NHS hospitals or settings, but also multi-faith prayer space and so on. So how are we engaging right now? Well, there is the occasional request to go in, and we certainly do that if we are asked to, especially at end of life. Alternatively, they might ask us to connect remotely and deliver end of life rituals, for example, or just a listening ear, sympathetic one. And funerals, naturally, especially when monastics are in lockdown and decide, sometimes it is a decision made at the organizational level. And so the head temple might decide that monastics are not going out for funeral. It is too dangerous. They might bring back the virus, and then the whole monastery or temple might be in trouble. And so we step in ourselves. We are talking about funerals. We are now talking about water babies, or mizuko kuyo, as it is called in Japan. You might have seen pictures of some temples in Japan with the little statues surrounding in the grounds around the temple. And they might be wearing some woolen hats, red hats, maybe little scarves. And they are memorials for pregnancies that never came to the delivery for whatever reason. And there is a real need to provide support, but also some kind of rituals to bring the grief of parents to an end, some closure. So we are thinking about that. Naming ceremonies, why not? Buddhism is taking roots in the West now, and we should be able to have some ceremonies where names are given, maybe Buddhist name, maybe not, but still with a Buddhist blessing and something inspirational. Weddings, possibly. But certainly at the moment there is pre and post-funeral pastoral support. We've seen recently that due to lockdowns and so on, the level of suicides have increased, and so even more now than before. And memorial services later, a month later, a year later. We are already doing those. It does happen that people come to the Buddhist Society because they are in need of talking to someone and get some advice in their practice online, now that the society is closed, and the society will respond as best as it can. And naturally, the society is also carrying on running the correspondence course, and so there is tutoring to be done there. We're being asked to run remote assemblies, one from Chester, of all places. Yeah, we can reach far nowadays. In a way, one of the blessings of this kind of situation is that it has given us new tools and the opportunity to step up and reach out more widely, and the other way around to get participation coming from all over the country. Yeah. Because people can connect remotely online nowadays and can practice with remote sanghas. And we can do workshops on Buddhism. We carry on helping students with their projects. They come with all sorts of wonderful questions. Sometimes they hope that we actually write their essays for them. It hasn't changed since my early days. And then representation in sacras and government-inspired faith initiatives. For example, at the moment, the government is monitoring how the various policies around COVID-19 are impacting the faith communities, and wants the Buddhist Society advice every 2 weeks, and so on. So if you want to move on to the next one. As we engage in different settings, we need to be aware of a number of issues, not necessarily negative issues, but certainly there is diversity in the Buddhist community and potential, and there is a room for stepping on toes or for being insensitive sometimes, and so on. And those issues, and a chaplain needs to be aware of those and find there and then on the spot ways around whatever arises. Yeah, but in order to do that, we need to be aware of what the issues might be. And the one is the role of the Sangha and laity, the role of teachers, gurus, masters, and some are more involved with practices like meditations, chanting maybe in some organizations. It is no use going to see a Soka Gakkai patient in hospital and try and impose some meditation on them. You know, they are into something else. They are into chanting in their own way. And there are new forms of associations. Nowadays, we've got people living in temples, maybe for years, maybe for a lifetime. Same-sex communities, mixed monasteries, online and remote sanghas where the teacher might be in one country and the sangha is spread all over many other countries. You've got lay chaplains nowadays, as we are adapting to the Western society and the needs of the Western society. Upasaka, upasika, more traditional, etc. The role of women and how they are seen in different traditions, ordained, not ordained, partially ordained, and not just women. We are talking about the wider gender issue now as well. And celibacy, traditionally in southern countries, there are other countries, monks wouldn't marry, would be celibate, but in Japan, and possibly in Korea, you got the role of the priest, running a temple, having a family, and in monasteries, maybe they would be celibate instead, and so on. So there are a number of issues that we need to be aware of. And then there is the textual one. There is no point in trying to recite the Heart Sutra to a devout Sri Lanka, for example, in the Pali tradition, the Pali canon, and sometimes the other way around. Some Mahayana who just are used to see the Lotus Sutra, for example, we don't have anything else. And so we need to be aware of what goes and what doesn't. If you can move to the next one, please. Doctrinal issues. And you got the Arahant and the Bodhisattva, and you got the personal effort versus practicing together and awakening together, as it is put. And you got Buddha nature on one side and maybe interbeing, and on the other side, the unborn, unconditioned, the deathless. You got anatta, not self, and sunyata on the other side. And they don't need to be in conflict. It is very much down to the skills and the insight of the chaplain itself to be able to use the appropriate language in a way that it is true to him or herself as well as to the patient. Yeah, and then you got the adoption of local trappings and the language as well, and structures. And I always think of priests. You know, no priests in Sri Lanka, but we do here. We got even bishops in some monastic lines here. Abbeys, people are talking about abbeys and the parliaments and all sorts of things. And a strong feature of Buddhism is its capacity to adapt to the local culture and restate the message, the basic message of the Buddha in a cultural sensitive way, tweaking the existing narratives in such a way that the message of the Buddha comes through. And on meeting Taoism in China, it became Zen. And Shintoism in Japan, and people there practicing both without feeling guilty at all. And Bong in Tibet, and you got the magic Tibetan Buddhism and Tantra. Nowadays in the West, Buddhism and psychology often are speaking the same language, or they are borrowing from each other, the techniques as well. And other disciplines that came into being separately, yoga and say Qigong or similar. Nowadays they are taught in Buddhist centers, and there is a Buddhist side to it, the attitude in which they are carried out or taught and so on. Even Christianity in the West, you know, there is a monastery or temple in the States where, you know, their patron there is Maria Canon. Yeah, and if any of us has seen, I think it was Silence or something. It is about Jesuit missionaries going into Japan in incognito as much as they could, and what happens next. And the Christian persecutions there, yeah, they were really persecuted at some point. And in order to maintain their faith, they adopted the canon as their Virgin Mary. Yeah, so outwardly it was a canon, and inwardly it was the Virgin Mary. And but that doesn't happen without the consequences. There are consequences to whatever we do. And the two symbolic figures nowadays, even in the way they are dressed, have started melting together in a way. They are very similar. The heart responds in the same way. And there you go. There are points of contact with the Christian as well. I know of places in Italy where they celebrate Mass, and then they have meditation together, mixture of Zen and Christianity, Christian Zen maybe, if you want to put it that way. Chanting is changing in native languages, lovely, but also in English nowadays, architecturally, and we might be thinking of Amaravati, for example, and to us it looks very much a Buddhist monastery, but it is so Western in the layout, cloister, and it is changing. Some practices are being dropped, begging, food begging rounds. Other practices are adopted, like trusts to run organizations, very much needed in Western countries. And so Buddhism is putting down roots, but changing at the same time. Can we have the next one, please? And the new cognitive models, we are all aware that the Dalai Lama has been talking to scientists for the last 15 years or so. And as I was mentioning earlier, there are big points of contact. And many scientists are amazed nowadays of when they start really digging into early Buddhism and see what the Buddha was saying, and finding parallels with the new narratives proposed by modern science, the nature of mind, and so on. And so that is an exciting areas of development. Psychotherapy and mindfulness-based therapies, you just name it, it is big. And addiction recovery. There is some interesting development as well in going back to early Buddhism, because skipping over the strong emphasis on the momentariness of experience proposed by the Abhidharma, perhaps overstated. And as a result, the Yogacara came into being, because early Buddhism is full of potential. It is easier to create bridges from modern science to early Buddhism than through the Abhidharma, for example. So interesting developments there. There is a side which involves social engagement, not in the way of political engagement, but in the way of service, pastoral care, chaplaincy, caritas. It is the Western society, Christian society, is imbued with it. And it was inevitable that Buddhism coming into the West would pick up on it. It is very much expected, but it is a very good training ground as well. We can see it for ourselves. When we make a service of our life, it becomes lighter. It becomes a more joyous life. And all of those aspects, which might be stressed more in one tradition than another, they all can be brought back to the common root, to early Buddhism. And so we can proceed, especially in chaplaincy, where we are going to deal with many different, not just faiths, but also traditions within Buddhism. We've got a model to go on with, and it is the Ekayana one, which respects the diversity of the various traditions, but manages at the same time to reconduce them to the origin, to the core of Buddhism. And that is where we place our stress always, in what unites us and what is inspiring us from the time of the Buddha. Okay, if we want to move on to the next one. Variety of practices, naturally, meditation, various types of meditation, cultivation of awareness in daily life. The Satipatthana is very much rooted in early Buddhism, but also in the Zen tradition, in the Tibetan tradition, the cultivation of awareness in daily life, the containment of the energy, the transformation of that energy. And it happens through a variety of means. We've got precepts to give us guidelines on the behavior and the parameters to inspire us. They might come in different numbers or shapes or orders in different traditions, but it comes down to similar things. Chanting, very much so. Another giveaway that it is a religion. It is touching the heart. It is actually, it wants the heart to be involved. And we got all sorts of wonderful styles of chanting. And we are lucky as chaplains that to some extent we need to have a basic familiarity of them all, because when we are asked to chant something in a hospital and we are dealing with a Soka Gakkai, maybe guy or lady, it is different from a Zen one or from a Theravada one. So it is very much a desiderata that, you know, we should actually learn basic chanting, not just in English, but in Pali, Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato, or in Sino-Japanese, or in Pali, or in Sanskrit, maybe the Heart Sutra, basic Tibetan chanting, Om Mani Padme Hum, Taya Te Om, and so on. Devotional, yes, of course, it lifts the heart, and almost all of them will have an altar with candles, flowers. There will be practices like circumambulations. And nowadays, because we got access to different traditions, and even when we belong to one, we can't help seeing what other traditions do. We start mixing. You see Zen people doing circumambulations shamelessly. And the other way around, and bowing. You see people of all sorts of tradition really going down and bowing the Tibetan way. I was talking to someone in Italy the other day. We were doing some practice together, and he's learning. And he said, you know, what you said last week, what actually speaks most to my heart is proper prostration down to the floor and raising my hands. You know, the effect that it has got on my heart. Yeah, so we are learning from each other. And at the end, when we close with an intra-faith type of invocation, a Buddhist one, but valid for all traditions, you will see that there is a repentance and going for refuge, undertaking the precepts, the vows, and offering up whatever merits for the benefit of all. We go on pilgrimages. The ones that among us who have done it know that it is something special. Being Bodh Gaya or Sarnath, or it is physical. Being there with a lot of people from all over the world, it changes you. Yeah, it really changes you. And the undertaking of the precepts, the vows, or whatever they are, in the morning, setting the intentions for the day in, day out. It is a habit that will carry us in difficult situations. And you've seen the mala at the back, and we've got mandalas and mudras, the hands in various positions, mantras that we recite in many traditions, prayer wheels, beads. We got end-of-life rituals, so some of them can only be delivered by empowered practitioners, like power at the end of life. But in some other traditions, we don't have ministers at all. And it is lay people who actually perform them. And at the Buddhist Society, we are striking a balance there. And, you know, and because especially we cater for people who normally don't relate strongly to any temple, monastery, or tradition, then it makes even more sense that it is lay people, practically speaking, taking care of any possible rituals without interfering with or overstepping the mark. We wouldn't deliver power, for example, because we know it needs to be done by someone empowered to do so. Names giving, yes, we do. Can we move on to the next one, please? And we were mentioning them. We will go into these kind of things during the workshops in the new year. There isn't time tonight, but if you can move on to the next. So you would have the precepts, the paramita, please, the next one. The 4 divine abodes, yes, next one, please. And just a few words, because we could be talking for days here. But the Buddhist attitude, the way to deal with pain, emotional pain, and so on, acceptance. It is part of life. We can't have pleasure without having pain. We can't have joy without having sadness. That is what being human means. I know we try all the time, and we are under the impression that we should have just one side and not the other one, but it is not going to happen. You know, we are in samsara, which is also nirvana, but we are in samsara, and that is what life is. And so it is a matter, first of all, of embracing it, accepting it, and turning the difficulties into the path itself. It is not that the difficulties are difficulties on the path preventing us. If only then I would be able to know. The difficulties are the path. Yeah, and they are the opportunities of turning those difficulties into growth, which is also the shedding of me. It is the letting go. It is accepting of being nailed on the cross. Because even Christian, the point of contacts are many between the two. Even Christians, first thing in the morning, they say, thy will be done. Yeah, that is the prerequisite. And then half of the problems have gone. And they've got the symbol of the cross, accepting to die on that cross. You see, when in hospitals, people, Christians especially, tell me, what have I done? I've been a good boy, or I've been a nurse my whole life, and now I am dying of cancer. Why is God punishing me? Yeah, and obviously I don't believe in a personal God, but that is not the issue. What I tell them normally to try and help them is that the moment God creates you, He's in your heart. Yeah, because that is the only way life can be. And He's on the cross. He's both divine and human. He's caught in the dualities, in pain and pleasure, in this and that, in loneliness and in participation. And, it is endless. Continuity and discontinuity. And it is only in dying to little me on that cross and that truly accepting life as it is, which is also the manifestation of the love of God. In order to create a God will suffer. That is the love of God. When we truly die on that cross, we awaken in the origin, at the right-hand side of the Father, and realize life that does not begin and does not end, which is the eternal life in Christianity. In Buddhism, is not in time or space, but the message, the basic message is still there. And they are a bit puzzled normally, but it sinks in. They are pacified as well. They never heard of that presentation of their narrative. Yeah. And it is just a hint on what you might have to come up with when you are in the world talking to people of different traditions. And as you can see, it needs to be gestated in yourself. I had to recover my Christian upbringing and make sense of it through Buddhism. Yeah, so that there is no conflict now there. It is not probably the way many Christians would see it, especially fundamentalist ones, but it does the trick for me and for many other people. All right, but the Buddhist point, the Buddhist way is to point out that is life. And in a way, life is suffering. The Buddha was saying that. Yeah, most of life is suffering. Even when we are overjoyed, there is suffering that because there is anatta, there is a change, and there is impermanence. And the Buddha was saying, with the two arrows, was saying, that the suffering of life is unavoidable. It is the result of causes and conditions. The moment we come into being, that is part and parcel of our life. But the suffering that is totally unnecessary is the one that we pile onto ourselves. It is the second arrow that comes and splits the first one into two and that is much more painful. And that is why me, why now, what have I done to deserve it, rather than turning the occasion into an opportunity for practice. Next one, please. How are we doing with time, for time? Have I got another 10 minutes or so? Okay, thank you. So we can move on because, just a basic understanding, and the rest will be done next year in workshops. I'm sure there will be one just on our own understanding from the Buddhist point of view of illness and pain and how to use it and pain management, all sorts of things. Can we move on to the next one, please? And again, because we are still in the realm of how to practice. How to care for anyone, really, is by practicing ourselves. That is the basic idea. Unless the practice is well rooted in our own daily life, or the other way around, we won't be able to help others. The first difficulties they will see through our words. Yeah, but we have got models even in the Mahayana, for example. We got the 4 great bodhisattvas. Yeah, and they are telling us that the clear seeing represented by Manjushri, the one who cuts ignorance with the sword of wisdom. Clear seeing comes with the heart opening. As the seeing clears, the heart opens more and more. It doesn't just need to be a one-off. In actual fact, there will be many, but it is also a gradual process. As we let go more and more of me, the heart starts singing more and more and opening up more and more. And we start feeling less and less isolated and lonely and more available to others. And then we discover that by helping others, we are helping ourselves, actually. Yeah, those two are very important. The clear seeing and the compassion, being with the passion of others as well, without running away, and our own, are really showing us the practice. They come with the skillful means, Samantabhadra, riding the elephant, because unless we actually know how to help others where they are, and we need to respond in real time to the real situation, which means we don't even need to think. Our practice needs to be strong enough that naturally the response comes, and it will be a measured one, and it will be an inspiring one. The acquiring skillful means comes from deepening our own practice. It is not that I got to think up clever ways of helping others. They will come naturally as the practice deepens. And the commitment as well, the vows of the bodhisattvas. But in the Theravada as well, look at the Buddha. He walked 45 years teaching in Northeast India, without saying, oh, I follow the Bodhisattva model, and no, he just did it out of his own heart. And that commitment that is symbolized in the Wheel of Life, where we see the hell realms. If we look closely, there is a Buddha there or a Bodhisattva. There is always one. The way back home is always there, even in hell. And but in order to be able to help people in hell, we need to be willing to go there, and we need also to be strong enough not to get involved in the suffering. Otherwise, we would only add on to the suffering of others rather than helping them. So we got the 4 bodhisattvas there showing the way. And the non-judgmental listening, deep, sympathetic, the encouragement to accept what is happening, already said earlier on, to investigate it. Even in the 7 factors of enlightenment, if we recall them, the first one is sati, the recollection of what is happening. and followed by investigation of what is happening. And that brings about energy, because the energy keeps being contained to some extent at least. And when that energy is contained and guides me away, it becomes joy, bubbling up. Okay, before I disappear into nirvana, if we can move on to the next one. So when we are there, especially with Buddhists, but with others as well, the emphasis is on spiritual practice. Yeah. Be it Christian, Buddhists, or whatever, and they are without energy, they are depressed at the end of their life, maybe, or they've been given bad news or whatever. I might be asking them, do you say your grace before eating? Yeah? Do you say your prayers in the morning? Yeah. Practice. It is not in the head, it is in the practice. It is in opening the heart, in the acceptance, and turning adversity rather than fighting it, rather than thinking that I don't deserve it. In Buddhism, we are lucky. The Buddha told us we should consider karma as belonging to me. Yeah, whatever is happening is mirroring exactly this guy here. It is not that it should be happening to my neighbors or maybe 5 minutes later or earlier. No, it mirrors Mariano precisely. Yeah, and we should turn the opportunity into an opportunity for practicing. There is a saying in Buddhism that when the disciple is ready, the master appears. What is not said is if the disciple is really giving himself or herself into what life is asking of me right now, then life itself is the teacher. As the Buddha said on his deathbed, when they were asking, who shall we take as our teacher when you die? And the Buddha said, take the Dharma as your teacher. And it is not just the teaching, it is the way things really are. Not my dreams, not my hopes, expectation, regrets. No, the way things really are. That is the teacher. Okay, we can move on. And the practice, that kind of practice, help us because it gives us back some agency in a way. Yes, Buddhism is about anatta and so on, but at the same time, it gives us back agency. It replaces the feeling of being a victim with the active, joyous, wholehearted participation. And we can start the process of transformation. We can participate in the process of transformation. And Buddhism is not concerned about explaining in words why it is happening, and it is a test from some divine being to find out whether you love them or not, or whatever it is. No, it is about creating meaning in our life right now, because it is in that total giving that we find the release from suffering, in the unconditional letting go and embracing life. And then we find that life cannot be otherwise, and nirvana and samsara are not really two different things. Can we move on to the next one, please? So what are we trying to achieve with the training? Well, we need people able and willing to work effectively in multi-faith teams, flexible, willing to slip into different roles as the situation demands, ideally willing to say the prayer of St. Francis or the Bhagavad Gita if requested without panicking and thinking, oh God, am I soiling my soul now that I'm going to say a Christian prayer? But they need to have knowledge of other faiths, narratives, and cultural issues around them as well. We don't go there and shake hands with the first Muslim woman that we encounter in the world. We need to be aware of those kind of things. willingness and ability to communicate. And so there will be for sure a workshop on body language, difficult communications as well, the techniques there. Becoming aware of our own messages, what we are giving out with our body language. Yeah, and also reading the body language of others, yeah, in order to avoid unnecessary difficulties. Intra-faith issues, as we were mentioning before, and so careful how we are trying to be of help, and knowledge of the protocols in the NHS, but prisons, if someone is going to prisons, and also the organization's dynamics, wards, offices, organizations, political minefields. I can, from my own personal experience, I can tell you that. And we need to be aware of that. If we can move on to the next one. Yes, we need to be rooted in our own tradition and practice, because we need to be able to respond without thinking. Not out of, yeah, the head is involved as well, but primarily it is out of the habit of letting go and coming back to where we are and making ourselves available. There will be ethics and bioethics. The technology is changing all the time, and it is not a theoretical one. I myself was involved in a couple of situations where it was life and death, and patients were asking me what they should be doing, whether they would be allowed to ask for the termination of some treatment and let die. Yeah, and it is a matter of understanding where the patient is coming from, in what state of mind they are, whether they are fully aware of what they are saying, and they won't. And and then we need to think 50 years ago, some of these procedures were not even around. A natural end of life is fine if it is coming from the right place in the heart. But we need to be very careful ourselves. We don't want to cause unnecessary problems. They would be big problems, and then we would pay our own price as well, because karma follows us, as the Dhammapada says, like the wheel follows the hooves of the beast pulling the cart. The ability to communicate clearly, verbally, non-verbally, including body language, and picture it, and sometimes there are children involved, and sometimes there are people mentally impaired, dementia. We still need to be able to communicate. Yeah? So we need training there. First aid toolkits, psychological ones. We need to be able to detect signs of distress and so on. Even during meditation, if we are running a meditation class, safeguarding is important. We need to be able to read the signs. Security and safeguarding guidelines. Yep. If you can move on to the next one. And we are repeating here what has been said earlier on. Mostly, we would be working with in hospital with people of other faiths. So even more important that we are careful about what we do. And so mostly volunteers. There would be a few bank chaplains. In the whole country, there might be less than a handful of full-time Buddhists. But in that role, normally they are generic chaplains rather than Buddhist chaplains. If you can move on to the next one. It is relevant to what I'm going to say next. Training, what are we hoping to do in 2021? There will be in January, probably end of January, a presentation on the Standing Advisory Councils for religious education and in schools, talking to children and so on. Representation of Buddhism in these bodies, because we need people to get into there as well. But after that, we're going to chaplaincy properly. and it will be around one, maybe more, but one for sure, rituals at the end of life, last rites, how to customize them according to circumstances, maybe funerals, memorial services, water babies, if we are introducing this kind of rituals as well. And they all need to be customized according to circumstances, according to traditions, the congregation, the mixture of the congregations, ethics and modern ethics, organ donation, transplantations, and so on. Start of life and name ceremonies, and maybe weddings too. Basic ritual chants, very important in my experience. People do appreciate some chanting. They don't want intellectual speeches at the end of their life. They want some chanting, and if they love Taia Te on Bekanze, that is what they want. And so there will be at least one just on chanting, a little bit of Pali, a little bit of Tibetan, Sino-Japanese, maybe the Heart Sutra, maybe the Heart Sutra in Sanskrit. I know the society is thinking of running some Sanskrit classes maybe as well. Pastoral care, bereavement, suicides, grief, role playing will be part of it. Yeah, and it will be great fun, especially if we are, but even online, we can go into breakout rooms and role play, and I can pretend to be a grandmother who wants to baptize a child contrary to the parents' wishes, and you are the chaplain, and all sorts of things. Difficult communications, body language, yep. Safeguarding, very important, both with adults and with children. NHS volunteering and introduction, you will get proper inductions in hospitals as you join the teams there. And I do recommend, even though I shouldn't perhaps, but if you are in London, the Guy's and St. Thomas is the best one, around 4 days, hands-on as well. And then that would be followed after 6 months by a postgraduate if you are inclined that way. And at the end of the postgraduate, you would be officially installed as a chaplain, and you can look for full-time jobs as well at that point. They are very good with those kind of rituals there. But yeah, the NHS will provide its own training. So we are not stepping on other organizations' toes. We are just providing the Buddhist side, but also basic skills that you will need in whatever situations. And naturally, there is prison chaplaincy, but it is Angulimala looks after itself for these days. But some people might be involved with both, and the kind of skills that you need in one similar to the ones that you need in others. You might be dealing with very disturbed people, both in prisons and in mental hospitals, for example. So if we can, let me see what we got in the next one. Okay, I think we can stop there with the training. I just want to say that right now there isn't really in this country any Buddhist training going on right now in the way of chaplaincy. For the next year, we are planning to run workshops that will be by donation. They will be informal, yeah, but it is a first step to make ourselves known to the Buddhist Society as well, so that the Buddhist Society can trust us to work with the Buddhist Society in these areas. And it is in preparation of more formal things probably coming next. There would be, for people who are that inclined, there would be theology degrees in Cardiff, for example, or even an alternative route is social sciences or humanities, even type of degrees in ethics, in philosophy, And then some universities in Cambridge, Oxford would allow you to do a postgraduate in spiritual care or chaplaincy. That is another way. But, you know, that is besides the Buddhist part. You still need to go through Buddhist training concerning intra-faith issues and the way the Buddhist narrative approaches suffering and so on. And there would be specialized one. Angulimala runs its own courses, and we are not, stepping on their toes. We can help wherever we can, and we are happy to help them if they ask for help. But they've got stringent security requirements, as you can imagine there. So, and there would be faith beliefs, even no faith organizations like the Humanist, delivering very good pastoral care courses that one can use in order to integrate it later with Buddhist training and so on. At the moment, whatever is on offer, consider it. The Buddhist Society does plan to come up with the proper training in due course. And I think we are now open for questions. I know I've been talking a lot, but I do apologize as usual.
We'll ask ask the questions so we don't lose our audience. But I want to thank you, Mariano, for a very extensive talk. The first question, which I think we should deal with, is perhaps being a bit more concrete, because somebody has asked here what we'll actually be doing, what in practical terms we will be doing in 2021. Now, how are we going to communicate this, Mariano? Are we going to send out people to send their names in, and then we should also publish the workshops, online?
Yeah, we'll by the end of the year, beginning of January, after the festivities, let's say, the office will publish a schedule of the workshop. Take it that they will be monthly, roughly, because they require time to plan. Also, we need to keep an open mind, because if a vaccine is coming out and by springtime we can start meeting again, the likelihood is, and it is a commitment by us, that yes, we can meet at the society, the ones that can, but the society is keen to keep on board anyone across the country. Because nowadays it is possible to get you to participate in the society activities wherever you are.
Good.
So yes, you've seen on the last screen, you've seen roughly what kind of workshops we would be aiming for, but it is a very rough idea. We need 3 or 4 of us to sit down, brainstorm, work through them, and then one by one start delivering them, and we will learn as we do it.
That specific question was from Mark Pierce, and I wonder, Mark, did you want to ask any other question on that? If you have, just unmute yourself if you're still in the audience.
You can unmute yourself, Mark.
Maybe Mark's gone. I'm not sure.
Mark is still there, but he might need to be
unmuted by
okay. Now it is. Mark.
I'm so sorry. I had difficulty unmuting myself.
Me too sometimes.
I think my question is rather different, really, and it's around, I suppose, my own confidence in my own practice, allied to my knowledge, my working knowledge of other faiths. And I wondered whether you could say a little bit, Mariano, more about those two aspects. And I'm sure the training will cover, the other faiths.
Well, it is. I'm sure you are practicing with a group. Am I correct, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah. So it is very important to be well rooted in your practice there, because that is the rock bottom out of which you will make sense of other practices as well. Yeah, it is the ground of your practice that will respond naturally when presented with different narratives, because there is a little insight there coming from letting go, more and more, letting go of my ideas and my worries about it. Yeah, and then you will see, the first time that I went into a ward, it reminded me of when my baby daughter was born, a little bundle, and I didn't even hear Italy scoring, against Germany. They won the World Cup in '82. My daughter, I was going around with the pram and my long hair, my bandana, feeling so uneasy, new role, responsible for a new life. And I was not even responsible for mine, and it comes from doing it. The courage to make yourself available and of service. It is not, remind yourself, it is not about me. Every time I go into a ward, I stop a second before opening the door. In a bow, hand over. We've got a lovely image, the 1,000 arms Bodhisattva. Wangin, Avalokiteshvara, canon in Japanese. She hasn't got any arms of her own. She needs to borrow them all. But she can only borrow them if I lay myself down, already down. That is even before entering the wards, just in a bow. It is not about Mariano's performance, at all. Forget about Mariano. It is just being of service to the ones there, and then it happens. If you are in the Zen tradition, you might have been, or in the Theravada one, is the same. It is it is about letting go. And then magically, it will surprise you time and again. Magically, it happens, and magically you connect, because the barriers are me. And other people can actually perceive it. When there is a really, the openness, they respond. And they want you to be the chaplain.
Mariano, I'm conscious of the time.
Yeah, sure.
There's another question here. This is an important question because it's a very specific one, and I presume it's quite urgent, but it's a private question. But thank you, Mariano. Can I ask you about helping someone at the end of life and handling of pain? A friend of mine who has terminal cancer brought up the subject of the fifth precept, which is intoxicating drugs. When she needs to take morphine.
Yes, it is the middle way. There is a form on the Buddhist Society website on Chaplancy resources, I think, Chaplancy, and then there is a form to find out right in there. They will pass it out to me, then we'll start talking. But basically it is the middle way. Whatever is available, while at the same time there is the desire also to maintain awareness, but not suffering for the sake of suffering, because it doesn't help. It is always a matter of striking the right balance. And it points to the fact that it is so important to prepare to die while we are alive.
And the next question from actually the same person is, how do you deal with failure from the sense of not being skillful enough?
There is no failure. Those dolls which have got a very heavy base, and you push them, they fall over and bounce back straight away. The one saying failure is me. It is me saying failure. It is just, it didn't turn out the way I expected. It is a matter of looking at it, seeing what was in the way, and normally there is me as well, besides other things, and seeing how it can be done best the next time, and letting go. Yeah, in order to be open for what is coming next and do things properly next, we need to let go. Yeah, no regrets. Yeah, it is a repentance, as we are going to do in a minute. Certainly, it is a repentance. It is recognizing where it has gone wrong. Don't make it me. It is not my failure. Yeah, and we let it go as well. We don't need to carry the guilt. Oh, I am so guilty, and it is another way of identifying, to give myself some substance, my guilt. I love my guilt and my sadness as well.
Well, we're getting on now. We're getting on for 8 o'clock, so I'm conscious of that. There's a question from Peter. Will the workshops be online?
We'll aim to either make it available afterwards online. It might not be in real time if we are doing it at the society. It is a technical issue that we need to work out. There might be both. We might do it at the society and also in my own time, our own time from home for the ones who couldn't be there. It might happen. We need to try and see how it works out, because there will be practical things to be done as well. People will need to be engaged.
Can I contribute to that?
Yeah.
We are at the society because of COVID and all the online streaming that we've been doing. We realize that there's no way back, and so probably we will be, with all our classes, we might be doing the mix, there'll be people there and it'll be online as well.
Lovely.
I think that's the way really to be very inclusive and to
lovely. I love that.
And share in one way or another.
So it means even if you are in the Highlands, you're welcome to join in.
We have very large screens, some very large screens of the society where people can be present on the screens with everybody in the, but it's a question of working out the technicalities of that. Especially,
breakout rooms. We might have a few groups at the society, a virtual group online. We'll work it out. I'm sure we will work it out.
Good.
And also the other one, if I can, if you are an expert in any of those areas, how to deal with this and that and the other, come forward. Yeah, because we are training each other. It is not that Mariano knows everything. Mariano knows nothing. Mariano is picking up as he goes along. So come forward, make yourself known, tell us where your strengths are, and we make use of it.
Okay, well, I think that sort of brings us, to the end. Are there any more questions? Anybody want to put up their hand and ask a question?
As I said, there is the form, there is space there for raising the questions as well.
There is a question bar at the bottom under chat where you can type in a question.
As well.
I think we've got to the end, but I think that does seem to me that there is a core of people who are very interested in going on and doing more work in chaplaincy.
Lovely.
Which is all to the good. And I think we can, in 2021, we'll start and see where we get to. We do have the capacity to do a proper, diploma, a proper kind of chaplaincy training. But I think it's important to have a group of people who, would be interested in doing that. And then we can put more money into it, do it more formally.
For reflective practice as well, and ongoing, people meeting regularly for reflective practice. But also the first year, it will be to find out what works, what needs changing, adapting, and so on. So it will be experimental.
Yeah.
And so if we are at the end, we can close with the second part of the invocation. The first part was suitable for any faith or no faith. The second part is suitable for any Buddhist. So we just collect our heart a second. Sustained by the trust that comes from seeing the benefits of walking the path, we acknowledge our shortcomings resulting from beginningless greed, anger, and delusion. And with the renewed energy, we promise we undertake to observe the 5 precepts to the best of our ability. We undertake not to harm self or others, but to nurture our life with reverence, not to take what is not given, but to practice generosity and gratitude, not to misuse sexuality, but to treat every person with respect, not to engage in false, harsh, or idle speech, but to speak and listen from the heart, not to intoxicate the body or mind, but to cultivate awareness and clarity throughout our activities. With an open and empty heart, we hand over any merit accrued for the benefit of all, and we take refuge in the three jewels: the Buddha, our common heart and ground of being; the Dharma, his teachings and the way things really are; the Sangha, the community of all those who have kept the path open by walking it. May all beings find contentment and be free from suffering. May them all realize their true nature. May the virtue and strength of this recollection be of benefit to all beings. May all beings attain Buddhahood. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mariano.